Hey vinyl friends and vinyl community, it's Brian from Brian's Vinyl Records, and this is a video entry for a contest on the vinyl community. This one is for Various Vinyl and Jeff, and the contest is show 10 of your best sounding albums and one of your worst. So stick around after the break. I'm going to show you my picks for 10 of my best sounding records and my pick for my worst sounding record. Stick around. Alright, welcome back. So, the contest is to show 10 of your best sounding records and based on the press. So, I've pulled 10 records that I think sound amazing based on the press and just amazing altogether. If they weren't, they wouldn't be in my vinyl collection. But there were more. There's a lot more. I can pretty much give you every music on vinyl press that I have, and they all sound absolutely great. I have not yet received a music on vinyl press that doesn't sound great. So, instead of doing that, I went through and pulled some other stuff out here to show you. And we'll get things kicked off with one of my favorite sounding presses that came out last year, and that is the Beatles' White Album remastered by Giles Martin, son of George Martin, the original producer for the Beatles. So this sounds so awesome. Like, I've not heard the White Album sound as good as this does. It's a great double LP packed with just all sorts of great sounds that you just didn't hear before, I think, in the original mixes. Now, nothing to take away from what George Martin did with the original Beatles White Album, but what his son did, reimagining this album from the master tapes and everything else, you can't get better than that. And so this is one of my favorite represses on the Beatles catalog that there is. So the White Album by the Beatles, highly recommended if you have not checked this out. The next one is a music on vinyl pressing, and is one of my all-time favorite albums from an 80s hair band, and I'm talking about Cinderella, Long Cold Winter. This album is so good, so good. And when I saw that Music on Vinyl did a repress of it, and I hadn't had the original pressing or anything, I went with this. The original press may be great and everything, but if this is Music on Vinyl's press, I know it's going to be quality, and this is quality. So Music on Vinyl press is just fantastic stuff, and if I see an album that I want and they've done the pressing, I will almost always buy it. So this one here, Cinderella, Long Cold Winter, is one of my favorites in high school and is still one of my favorite albums today. I break this out quite often. It's just so good. The next one is brand new this year. It comes from Rat Pack Records, and this is John Corabi's Unplugged. Just an absolutely fantastic album. It is a lot of the songs that he did with Motley Crue and The Scream and a few other things are on this album. I think even his stuff with Bruce Kulick and Union is on here. And it's all done acoustically and in the studio. And the sound is absolutely amazing on this album. Rat Pack did a phenomenal job with this reissue. Highly recommended if you're a John Corabi fan. If you loved 94 Crew, check this out. This is fantastic. You'll love it. John Corabi Unplugged. The next one I want to show you is an album that is from one of my favorite bands, my favorite metal bands, Megadeth, and it's an album that I've always not liked. Not because the songs were bad, but because the recording was absolutely horrible. It sounded like they were recording in a tin can, and I couldn't believe listening to it ever. It was one of those albums that sat on my shelf and never really got a lot of play because of how horrible it sounded. So when I found out that they were remastering everything from the original tapes, including, changing a few things on different takes that they didn't use in the original, I thought that was an interesting concept. I just had to give it a shot because it's an album I want to listen to more. I just can't bring myself to do it, and they did a great job. They did a fantastic job. This is Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, the final cut. Unbelievable the difference in sound from the original to this remaster. Just fantastic. I love this album now. The songs on here are fantastic. They sound great. And for an album I would never listen to before, it's played quite often now in my house because it's that good. It's a great album, and it just needed good sound as well. And when Megadeth put this out, they fixed that sound. Sounds awesome. So if you're a Megadeth fan and you kind of have not given Killing Is My Business light of day in a long time, check this out. It's well worth it. The next one is from a band that a lot of people were really into in high school growing up and then kind of fell off, but they've put out quality albums. Every album they put out has been quality, and I'm just starting to get into the catalog that I kind of got away from, and this one is one of the favorites of the older albums that I wasn't involved in. My favorite is always going to be the original 3 albums, but this one is just really good. This is Pearl Jam's and I call it the Avocado album because of the cover. I think there's another term that people use for it, but it's self-titled Pearl Jam album, and this sounds really, really good. And it's made me a really big fan of this album. So a lot of times if I'm in the mood for Pearl Jam and I don't want to pull out 10 Verses or Vitology, which by far are my favorite 3 albums, I'll pull this one out because it just sounds really good and the songs are fantastic on here. So Pearl Jam self-titled. All right, I mentioned how much I love the White Album and what Giles Martin did to it. I also really dig Sgt. Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club Band. The reissue for this with Giles Martin remixing it again, fantastic. It sounds so good, so good. And so I highly recommend anything that he touches now. I'm hoping he'll go in and do some more of the catalog. I know they just reissued a whole bunch of the stuff in 2012, but I wouldn't mind seeing some of the other Beatles albums done the same way that he did with Pepper and White Album. So Sgt. Pepper's, this sounds great. Giles Martin Press. All right, the next one, I've seen a few of the videos out here and the disappointment with the release of one of the albums from this band, and I share in that disappointment because it's an album I do not have on vinyl because the reissue sounds so bad and people give it such a bad rap, but the reissue of this one sounds fantastic. This is Queensryche's Empire, and this one is actually my favorite of Queensryche's albums. This is the one I really got into when I was younger and in high school, and so the songs on this one resonate with me a little more than they do on the Operation Mindcrime and some of the other albums that they have. But I really enjoyed getting back into Queensryche, and I found this album at a local Barnes & Noble. I had to get it, so I picked it up. It's not a cheap album for sure, but it's worth it. It sounds really good. And this is a Friday Music press, and Friday Music gets a lot of grief because their presses are either hit or miss. This is definitely a hit for them. Really good sounding album and a good album altogether. And the next one, this is the first album I got from this band. This is a band that everyone loves, and I just never got into as a kid or even into my adult years. It just wasn't a band that many people that I knew listened to very much, so I never gave them much of a shot. But I was, in the vinyl community, everybody loves this band, so I thought, well, I might as well give it a try. And so I picked this up, and this is my first exposure to Pink Floyd. This is Dark Side of the Moon. This is the reissue that they did. I think it was 2014 that they reissued these albums. I can't really tell, but it sounds so good. And because I got this album and listened to it and really enjoyed it and was blown away by the quality of the sounds and all the different sounds that Pink Floyd uses in their albums, I've now kind of become a Pink Floyd fan and been starting collecting more of their stuff. So this is just really good. Great sounding. This next one is from a band that I love, another Music on Vinyl press. This is a conglomerate of Stone Temple Pilots and Guns N' Roses. They put out 2 albums. Only one of them is available on vinyl that I know of. And I've been eyeing this forever, and I finally bought it. It took me a while to decide to pay the price on it, but I did, and I'm happy I did. This is Velvet Revolver, Contraband. If you're really into Guns N' Roses and Stone Temple Pilots and hard rock and all that, this is a fantastic album. Just amazing songs, great songwriting. Scott Weiland's vocals are fantastic. Slash and Duff together again sounds really, really good. Highly recommend Velvet Revolver. This is Contraband, the first album. I hope that Music on Vinyl will put out the Libertad album as well. That would be just awesome. So, Velvet Revolver. And the last one I want to show you is the Rolling Stones. And this is the Abbey Road Studios half-speed master, Exile on Main Street. This thing sounds unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. And it should. Abbey Road Studios half-speed masters have always had a good reputation, and there's no doubt that this is at the top of that list. So I was recommended this. Amazon for some reason put it on sale, and yeah, it is just really that good. So there we go. Love it. Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, half-speed master, Abbey Road Studios. Great packaging on that one too. All right, so that leaves my worst sounding record, and I have shown this record a couple times before in other videos I've done, but it still stands as the worst sounding album I have, and the only reason I have it is for sentimental reasons, and that is this Beatles 1960 to 1962 album. It's a live album from the clubs in Hamburg, I believe recorded actually in 1962, and I mean, it's just the sound quality on this is just garbage. Sounds like crap. Not very good. So it doesn't get spun much around here, but it qualifies as the worst sounding album in my collection, I think. Yeah, it's all right. I keep it for sentimental reasons, and that's about it. So back to the shelf this one goes. All right, so that's going to do it for this contest entry. Again, I'll leave a link to the contest in the comments below. Please go and support Jeff over at Various Vinyl. The contest only runs until May 28th, so we're looking at today is the last day to enter. Get your things in there. The prize is a $25 gift card, so that's pretty cool. But get out there, support the vinyl community, get in some of these contests and watch other people's videos to see what they think their 10 best sounding albums are and what their worst one is. I've seen a lot of Operation Mindcrime. Thankfully, I have not bought that one yet, but I don't think anything will ever top my worst sounding one. It just is awful. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe below. Hit a like if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, keep spinning vinyl, friends.